Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody in cyberspace. I'm your host, Will Reed, and I'm here with the great legend, Dr. Gerald Auger himself. I'll give you a brief introduction for those of you that aren't familiar with him. Dr. Gerald Auger is the managing director at Coastal Information Security Group and the chief content creator for Simply Cyber, which is a platform that helps individuals advance their careers in cybersecurity. He is also, if that wasn't enough, an adjunct professor, author, podcaster, speaker, and most recently, a TV show host. And I am so honored that he has graced us with his presence today. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, this can be wicked fun. I'm super pumped to be your guest.
Yeah, I've been following you for a couple years now. So just for all my listeners that may not be as familiar with you, can you share with our audience a bit about your background and journey that led you to the cybersecurity field?
Of course, yeah. It was classically trained computer science, which I got in the early 2000s, like a bachelor's degree. So back then, like cybersecurity, it existed in the military kind of, but it wasn't really a mainstream career. It certainly, like put it this way, I went through a computer science program and there were not even a class that had cybersecurity, let alone, like a curriculum or an entire degree. So, um, I went out into the workforce and got a job as a software developer because that's all I thought you're supposed to do with a computer science degree.
Right.
And basically got my code audited for security, actually FISMA compliance, and I did terrible at it. And I was all sorts of angry about it. So I wanted to look into it to see if I could like somehow validate that I was not wrong. Just being a
Yeah.
complete stubborn, idiot. So I found out about cybersecurity and I was intrigued. And one of the hallmarks of people that work in cybersecurity is they love, frankly, like lifelong learning and love the idea that there is no end to, just the sheer volume of education and content and concepts and topics and diversity in cybersecurity, which is like right up my alley. So as soon as I found out about it, I was all in. And even when I was younger, like a little kid, there used to be a magazine, well, like a million years ago. I don't even think it's out anymore, called 2600. And it was like the original hacker magazine. Like I'd go to Barnes and Noble to buy it, so like I could buy it with cash. I'm like 12, and I'm like, ooh, I don't want this associated with my home address. I'll get on some kind of list. So I definitely knew then, but I guess I always had like a penchant for it, always certainly a desire to be in tech. And then once I got into cybersecurity, I just fell in love with it. I did some sys administration work for a little bit in there, which certainly lent itself to helping me be better as a practitioner. But once I found it, I just leaned in, and I actually went back to school. So I've worked in cybersecurity since like the early 2000s, and then I went back to school and got a master's in information assurance. I went and got a PhD in cyber operations. The PhD, like I didn't like the PhDs in cyber operations. Just to put a fine point on this, my
Yeah.
career has been on GRC and a little bit on the defensive SecOps side, and
Right.
cyber operations is fully on the offensive side to be like an
Yeah.
operator,
100%.
which is I'll never use those skills. But I just love it so much that I spent 5 years of my life working towards that degree. So I just love it. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's because I think you may have been the first person that I knew, or at least that I heard of, that had a doctorate in cybersecurity.
Mhm.
So, at what point did you make that decision to go through that process? Because that's not an easy journey to pursue a doctorate. So, kind of what led you
Yeah.
there?
So I don't tell this story often, Will. So I'm glad you asked this question. So I always wanted a PhD. I feel like most people who want a PhD, it's a self personal goal. It's like a life goal, a career goal, whatever you want to call it. And I graduated my master's in information assurance from Dakota State University, and I graduated with like a 4.0, and I was like really tight with all of the faculty and stuff because I loved it. Right, I wasn't like a undergrad student who's just like showing up to class and leaving. I'm like actively engaging with the
Right.
faculty and talking about research and stuff. And when I graduated, I said, "Hey, I really want to do a PhD." they're like, okay, cool. And but they didn't have the PhD in cyber operations at the time. So they had a PhD in information systems. And I was like, okay, it's not exactly the same, but I'll just make my research in cyber and that'll be fine. And I took the first semester. I got into that program. I did the first semester, like two classes, and like maybe 3 weeks into the first semester, I was like, this is awful. I don't like this is awful. Like everything about this is awful. It's like painful to even think about wanting to do the schoolwork, let alone actually do the schoolwork. So, and information systems is a much drier, not it's just it's a totally different discipline than cybersecurity. And it was terrible for me, right? So I contacted the school. I rescinded myself from that program. I said, hey, this is just not good. And I talked to the faculty in the cyber sciences department. I said, hey, listen, like, I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, guys. Like, I want a PhD, whatever, but this isn't for me. And they're like, okay. And then like maybe 3 years later, the program director from Dakota State University reached out to me because I had stayed in contact with them, and they said, "Hey, we got the NSA accredited and the state of South Dakota Board of Regents accreditation for a PhD in cyber operations, and we would like you to be in the first cohort." So like they reached out to me, so I had to apply, but I mean I was like personally invited basically to be one of the first 12 students to go through that curriculum, which is cool because we got to kind of figure it out a little bit. I made some great lifelong friends going through that program. So, like even today, like many of them I'm still associated with. And yeah, and then talk about day and night, right? So I do the cyber operations PhD, and like first semester, first week, I like can't get enough. It's like just like get me the largest punch bowl you have, fill it up and dunk it on my head, and
I
just keep
know.
going, right? Oh, it was so good. And from there I was off and running, and yeah, the rest is they say is history.
Wow, it's almost like they made that program just for you. It's like, hey,
Eh,
we
Yeah.
lost Jerry on this one. We got to get him back.
Yeah, that would be incredibly flattering. But I will say, so you said it PhD hard. I will tell you this, Will. So like for anyone who's listening or has thought about a PhD, it's two things. One, in a PhD program, the first part is like basically like a hard master's. That's the course stuff. And then there's a research project it took me like 18 months to do. A lot of people can do it
Oh,
between
wow.
like 12 and 15. Some people take 3-4 years to do it, but it's a massive research project. You literally write a book. Like I got the book up there. Like basically you print two copies. Well, one for yourself and one the library that you get the degree at puts one in their library as well. And then my aunts bought some too, right? But anyways, it's not a book that you get on Amazon. But what I will tell you is that experience, the research part, is so arduous and so lonely and so emotionally trying. It's unbelievable, right? And my wife was incredibly supportive, and even with all of her support, sometimes it's just you and the content, and like she can't help me write it. She can't help me. She can make life easier for me to be able to focus on it, but
Right.
it's hard. And if you're not really into it's already hard. And if you're not into the topic, if you're not in love with it, with what you're doing, you're going to fail. And in fact, there's actually this concept in academia called ABD, it's an acronym for all but dissertation. And it's
Mhm.
essentially a moniker labeled on people who complete the core classwork, but fail to do the dissertation research
Right.
project. And it's actually like, it's quite offensive if you refer to someone as an ABD. It's like
Really?
insulting to them. So yeah, it's like a whole academia, higher ed, like social caste thing. But anyways, it's hard. It's hard. So yeah, thank you for letting me like relive that experience.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing journey. That is something that I don't believe I have in me. I got a bachelor's degree and I was active duty Army when I got it. And so I actually joined the Army with the hopes of just doing my initial 5-year term,
Yeah.
getting out with a degree, and then using whatever skill set plus the degree to go and get another job. Well, I ended up actually retiring and doing a full 20 years in the
Oh
Army.
my gosh.
And I didn't get my degree until the year before I retired. Just because I mean it's just trying to do that full time and then 4 deployments and It was a lot for me to just do the bachelor's degree. So when I got done with that, I was like, oh, I couldn't imagine doing a master's, much less a doctorate. So I have
Oh yeah.
much respect for the people that are dedicated and committed enough to go through that entire process to do a doc, because I know it's a heavy lift, and it's hard. You mentioned it. It's hard on you. It's hard on the family. The family has to support it, and you have to be committed to it 100%. And they're just, again, like you said, times where it's just you and the content and the material, and you just got to put all that together and then make it digestible. So again, hats off to you. Appreciate it. I just don't think I have that in me.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And to really crystallize this for the audience on like what sacrifice would look like. My I have two children. At the time, one was 3 and one was born like while I'm doing this dissertation. Okay, so like that's the level of support my wife has given me on this. And for a period of 6 months, I would put my kids to bed on Sunday night because I was working full time as well. I would put my kids to bed on Sunday night and I wouldn't see them until Tuesday at dinner time for 6 months because I would put them to bed and then I would get up and go to work before they got up. And then I would go to, there's like a Starbucks near me that had like this space where you could kind of work and like lay everything out. So I would do that on Monday nights. And then actually, now that I think about it, I think I would do that on Tuesday nights as well, and I would see them on Wednesday at dinner
Ooh,
because yeah. So I think for 6 months, like that was the routine. So like in the worst is like getting a letter from your son who said like I can't wait for you to graduate so I can have my dad back. Like oh, like
wow. Oh,
that's
that's
like a
tough.
punch in the gut. Even
That's
I was like
tough.
oh, that was really close to the end of the dissertation. So you just kind of put your head down and plow through it. But sometimes it's easy to say like, oh, like if you don't love it, or like, but when you crystallize like the sacrifice, I think people can really identify like, holy crap, that really is something you got to make the decision on.
Right. Yeah. What I immediately thought of, and I hadn't even made that connection. That sounds almost like a deployment, like on the military side. I did 4 deployments. I did 10-month, 11-month, 13 months, and 15-month deployments.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was to Iraq and Afghanistan, to each. And so I like my first, like each one of my kids, like I deployed for a large amount of their like initial, like we brought them into the family, and then I'm
Yep.
out the door
Wow.
that quick. Matter of fact, we adopted my older two daughters, but they also experienced my deployments. But my last two deployments, my actual biological first two kids, had my son in November. I was gone in January
Oh my
on the
God.
deployment, and that was an 11-month deployment, and then got back. Then my wife got pregnant with my daughter, and then she had her in September. I was out the door in November, and that was for a 10-month deployment. And even when I got back from deployments, like my daughter didn't even, she hated me. She was scared of me. I would just look at her. She just start busting out crying because again, I hadn't been around her. She had
Yeah.
heard my
Like who,
voice, but
yeah. Who's
just
this
seeing
guy?
me
Yeah.
in person, it just, she was just like, she didn't know what to do. So like, she was just like, she just started crying. I just look at her like, oh, like I don't know what to do. She
Oh
eventually
my
got over
God.
it.
Yeah. That's like, that's so tough. It's so tough. Oh, it's so tough.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
kids are
and
the best, but it's really dynamic.
yeah, and it really puts things in perspective, which is why, like, it's like I wanted to, that really like made me submit myself in my decision to retire at 20 years and not go on and pursue additional years
Hmm.
in the military, because I just wanted to be there for my family. But even after I got, like, after that deployment, we went in PCS to, or we moved to Hawaii. And it was kind of the same thing. I wasn't deployed, but I was always gone. I was either in the
Yeah.
field out doing exercises, or I get called back to the States to do some training or get some input, strategic input on certain things. And my wife said almost the same thing. It's just like, I can't wait, because it seems like you might as well be deployed because you're never home. And
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
really stuck with me. So my immediately next assignment was Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is where I decided to settle down. And my family, her family, they're all in the Georgia area, southeast.
Nice.
So
Dude,
within 2.5 hours of our core family. So it was definitely worth it. And again, I just, you really feel the value of family when you have to go through something like something like a deep doctoral program where you have to commit so much time away from your family that, again, they miss you. You want to be there for them. But again, like it's all worth it in the end. Again, I have nothing but great things to say about my experiences in the military. It did bring my family closer together because, again, we appreciate the time now that we have together consistently. So,
Yeah, in Fort Gordon, that's up near Augusta, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It actually got renamed to Fort Eisenhower. But yeah, it was, yep, right near Augusta.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'm like, when I was working over there, I could leave my house and then I'm 7 minutes to get to back my desk. So, but yeah, right
Yeah,
there in
that's
Augusta for sure.
Augusta's like cybersecurity central.
Yeah.
It's kind I mean, if you're in the know, you know, but it's like big picture, it's kind of like low key massive cyber hub. It's
Yep.
there's a lot going on there. It's
Oh,
cool.
100%, 100%. Yeah, the resources, the people, and ironically though, a lot of the cybersecurity resources are aimed at the installation. So, and you're familiar with it, last year, summertime, there was the city of Augusta got hit. And
Mhm.
I know some people were like, well, like, isn't that the cyber, capital almost of the United States, or at least on the Army side? Like that's where Army Cyber came and located. And so
Yeah.
then they built that ginormous Georgia Cyber Center, and the state is pouring all this money into it. But a lot of that was pointed to like everybody's pointed towards the installation, and not a lot of it, at least from what I'm seeing, is aimed at the local area, right? And so that's kind of what drove me to starting my own business in this area, consulting with the hopes of kind of helping those things out. My kids are in the school system. I'm paying taxes here, so I want to be of value so that we can prevent things like that from happening, or at least be a little bit more cyber resilient, because I didn't get a warm and fuzzy even after it happened. Like it seemed like there was some, there wasn't a lot of transparency with what's going on, which leads me to believe that maybe we weren't as prepared as we needed to be. But that's just speculation on my part. But again, that's one of my decisions to move from W-2 employment to actually have my own consultancy so I can affect things. The place I was working at when I retired, eventually was, based out of the Midwest. So all their clients were in the Midwest, Iowa, Nebraska, Idaho, Illinois, those areas, right? But
Mhm.
I wanted to focus my efforts here, where again, like I'm bought in. I bought a house here, my family's here, so yeah, that's kind of my decision making. Which
Yeah,
I wanted to.
congratulations. It's a big step going into business for yourself and not one to be taken lightly. So very proud of you. That's very cool, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a challenge every day, and I'm learning to embrace this part of the journey. I was kind of came in kicking and screaming. I was trying to apply for jobs here and there, and that was taking up a lot of time. Like I could be putting a lot more effort into the business. So that's kind of where I'm at now, which actually brings me to our next question, which is a good pivot. We mentioned that you're the managing director of Coastal Information Security Group.
Yep.
You're also the co-founder there. What led you to start that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of people in our industry, you have skills, right? And you work W-2, but like other people always ask you, like, oh, can you help me with this or can you help me with that?
Right.
And,
Yep.
if it's small things, fine. But then when it turns into big things or, I don't know you things, um, you want to have the ability to basically, not expensive, but invoice for it, right? Because at some point it's work, right? And
Yeah.
so me and another guy had a gig, like it was like a pretty good opportunity. So we created this business as our as a vehicle, so we could do that first engagement, and we liked it. So we went and got some more work, and we were just doing full blown like consulting, just like enterprise risk assessments or awareness trainings or kind of like not breach assessments, but like, go into a business and kind of give them like a swath of like, all right, here's, the best practices for these things. Like, are you doing these? Like, go through some scenarios like, okay, if you got hit with ransomware, if you clicked on a fish, like what do we do here?
Right.
And that work was fine. But maybe, I don't know, 6 months after we started the business, I think he had a kid. It's been a few years because this started in 2016. I almost think that he had a child and he couldn't do some work. And then We kind of went dormant for a minute, and then I got some gig work. Long story short, I bought him out of that side of the business,
Okay.
and I fully owned the business, and then I kind of let it go dormant for a little bit, and then once I started getting a little bit more busy with like opportunities and stuff like that, I spun it back up, and then because Simply Cyber at some point started generating revenue either from like YouTube, Google, or like the YouTube revenue partner stuff or affiliate stuff, or now I have some courses that generate a little bit of revenue. So basically, they all kind of flow into this business unit. So it's definitely great to have a business, right? So if I was smarter, I probably would have like one business for the consulting and one business for the media and one business for the school. But I'm I'm not, I'm not looking to exit, right? That's not really like
Yeah.
I've learned, that's kind of the deal. Like if your business plan is to build up a valuable business and then sell it and do it again, then it makes sense to have everything really compartmentalized and modular so you can carve it off and hand it. But I didn't start all this with that intention. This was just like this is who I am and what I do. So it's okay being a little messy for me, but yeah, that's where that came from. In fact, to be honest with you, Will, I do less consulting now than other types of work, just because, um, for better or worse, I'm not really good at delegating work. I'm not good at management, so a lot of work falls to me. Like I reply to students who have trouble with the academy, like when they can't log in or when they can't find a receipt, like it comes to me and I respond to it. When
Yeah.
someone has a question about, whatever, or a client wants to talk through what would an engagement look like. Like I got called the other day by a rural healthcare in the state of South Carolina, and they're like, "Oh, we had this issue with the CTO. They left. We got some concerns. Can you talk to us about like what it would look like? How could you possibly help us?" And that's like 30 minutes right there. But the thing is, like, I don't scale well, and the consulting side, that is very, pay like money for time and
Yeah.
consulting, and like, you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
and you almost have to like, kill what you eat. Like, like that's probably an out of touch metaphor, but you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
basically you've got to like fill the pipeline and then execute the work. And then while you're executing work, you're typically not filling the pipeline. So consulting is, you're doing it too, Will. It is a tough road. So I do less of it now. It's almost more like, um, I hate to say like boutique, but I will either I'll take the calls, but a lot of times I'll just farm it off to. I have other friends who own information security firms in different capacities, right? Like my friend Eric Taylor over at Barricade, he owns a IR firm. I have
Right.
another friend, Brandon Poole, who owns a company called Panopsci. They do, kind of MSSP stuff. And then I got a friend over at Soteria. They do a whole host of things. So like I have enough network connections that I can help. That's my thing. I can help somebody with a problem. It just might not be me doing the work, and I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like and this is kind of where, like, I think of, I don't know, are you familiar with the book, The E-Myth Revisited?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've read it. Yeah,
Is Michael Gerber. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it's that making that shift from like, hey, I'm doing a job, I'm good at it, I enjoy the technical side of doing whatever that job is, and then it's like, oh man, like I could probably make some more money by doing this myself because obviously a company isn't going to hire me and then make less money because they hired me.
Right,
They're
right, right.
obviously
Yeah.
they're charging more for per hour for my labor than I'm getting paid per hour for that same
Hmm.
labor. So
Hmm.
like you just start doing the math like, oh man, like so like my previous company, they were their rate for GRC work, which is the department I was in, was $325 an hour.
Wow.
I was getting paid somewhere in the 70s.
Hmm.
And so like, man, I could make four times that amount and just by doing it myself. But then as soon as you start that process of going through a business, like now you're the one, like I was getting fed all these clients. I just had to show up on the calls and then kind of pitch what I'd be able to do for those clients. Like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you come do an incident response plan for us, Will.
Hmm.
What's that gonna like? How long is that going to take? Oh yeah, that's 20-hour engagement, whatever, 40-hour engagement, depends on how deep you want to go with this incident response plan. But now you mentioned it. You eat what you kill when you're out there and doing business on your own. You're your own consultant. You're finding the clients. You're booking the calls. You're writing out the statements of work to be able to map to what the clients want to do. You're also got HR, accounting, and then it's your hours. So like every hour that you spend with that client is hour that you're not spending growing the business. Now
Right.
you're developing that relationship with the client. Sure, they may come back to you for more business, but that right there doesn't scale because you only have a certain number of hours per day. And so I think that's a challenge. And this is where people like just they throw their hands up. But it seems like you and this may have been part of the decision, but like when you started Simply Cyber, was it
Mhm.
so that you could kind of get some of the benefits of being a cybersecurity problem solver and not necessarily be tied so much to what your hourly availability is associated with?
Yeah. So even though, I'm very, very blessed because I love cybersecurity and the fact that I can be in business for myself and work with cybersecurity and have kind of a righteous mission. It's unbelievable. I know there's a lot of people who have jobs that they hate, and I feel for you, and I understand how fortunate I am. When I started Simply Cyber, I was a full-time W-2. Like my career path up until a few years ago was like that. Coastal is a side business that I have as a vehicle to be able to do work when people come to me with work, right? Or I was trying to grow it a little bit, but for the most part, I came up and said, listen, I'm going to be a CISO and that's what I'm going to do. By the way, spoiler alert, careful what you wish for, right? Because being a CISO, I don't think I like it anymore. But when you get up there, top of the infosec heap, and like you're doing the things, and that's fine. And I was making great money as as a W-2 employee doing director of infosec, CISO type work, whatever, and it was good. But I just as a hobby wanted to do Simply Cyber. And this is a little bit of a origin story. I'll make it very quick. Between 2014 and 2016, I worked at a hospital, and there was a guy there named Steve Cardinal who was like a thespian, and he had done podcasts in the past. And he said, "Hey, like, why don't we do a podcast? Like, it'd be fun. I'll take care of all the production. You just be talent on air." And I said, "Okay, cool." So we did that for 2 years, but Steve would be sick sometimes or whatever. Like, so I learned how to produce a podcast, and then Steve had quit and I quit shortly after him, but I didn't continue the podcast after Steve left, but I had all those skills. And when I left the hospital, actually, I hadn't even left the hospital yet. I quit that podcast because I didn't like the fact that I was constrained. Like there were stories I wanted to cover that I couldn't cover because my employer basically owned the podcast. And I thought that that was jank. Right. So I was like, listen, I'm not doing this podcast anymore, but I really like it. I would love to do a video podcast on YouTube, and I'll make content for people to understand cybersecurity. So this is fine, right? Just as a hobby. Okay.
Mhm.
So I make a video, and I realize that people are DMing me and asking me like the same question, and or LinkedIn and asking the same question, and I'll answer them. I'll be like, hey, how do I get a job? Or hey, what's this? Or hey, whatever. And I'd be like, okay, like, and I type it out. It would take like 15 minutes, and I'm helping somebody, and that's great. And then like somebody else would ask me a very similar question. I'd spend 15 minutes, and I quickly realized, like, again, I don't scale. So I'm like, oh my God. Like it was, you know what? It was actually a lot of questions about my PhD. Like, what's it like to get a PhD? Should I go get a PhD? How hard's a PhD? And I just finished the PhD program. So if you go look at like my first 5 videos on Simply Cyber, like 2 are cyber related and 3 are PhD related. And
Okay.
I'm just like, with all due respect, like I don't have time to give you like, I don't want to give you a crappy answer, right? Because I feel like that's a waste of everyone's time. And I want to give you the right answer, but also like I just can't do it. If I did it for 6 people a day, that's like 3 hours of my day, which is just not going to work. So I started making videos, and I said, hey, listen, ask me the question because I know I'm going to get it. I'd have this canned email. I'd fire back with the link, and I'd say, hey, watch this. It'll answer your questions. If you have any other questions, I will be glad to answer them. I promise you.
Yeah.
Just watch this and then get back to me. And like literally 99% of people did not get back to me. So I assume the video answered their question, or they didn't want to put in the time and energy to watch the video. And then I'm like, okay, that either one is a win because if they couldn't even take the time to watch the video, like, it's kind of rude to ask me to spend 30 minutes to like, give this curated thing. So
Exactly.
so it never started as a business. And then, slowly it started building, building, building. And then it started, generating revenue. And then it really became a community. And I only went full time, like full time, like quit my W-2 in September of 2023. And that was really because Simply Cyber kind of amassed to the point where it was. And it was good. So never started as that. And I every day I just continue to try to grow it and build it. And going back to the E-Myth point that you'd mentioned earlier, one of the lessons in the E-Myth, if you're listening to this and you ever wanted to start your own business, it's a great book, very digestible. But one of the things he talks about, this is like a core tenet in the book, is that if you're like a lot of people get wrapped around the axle of working in the business, right? So like you're really good at, InfoSec or GRC or whatever. And like all day long, you're like just working on that. And you don't take time to work on the business, like grow the business or, go to conferences or go to like mixers and talk to business people about their business problems, whatever. So, and that's a real thing. And I just want to say, like, I feel that too, like, even though I'm full time and I get to do cyber every day, like every day I get up and stream and that's fine. I love doing that. But recently, like you had mentioned it in the intro, like I went to Vegas for 8 days to film a TV show. I went to Arizona like a month ago for a speaking engagement, which is part of my business, right? That's more on the consulting side. I made this huge course called Cyber 101 that took me 10 months. So like I've been really busy. And just this week, so we're filming this on a Tuesday, just this week, I had the opportunity because I just got back from Vegas where we were filming the show. I just got the time to be able to actually do work on the business. So like yesterday, I spent, this is ridiculous. I know it's crazy, but like I spent 3 hours yesterday making a public calendar so anyone can go to it and see like what all the activities are related to Simply Cyber. Right. It's one of those scale things, right? So now, because people DM me and they're like, "Hey, what time's this thing? Or when is this thing? Or are you doing it this week or whatever?" So now I'll just send them the calendar. And if you need any other questions, just ask me. Right? Again, it's that way to like deliver information asynchronously that frees your time up, which is a huge lesson learned. And then I just bought a like a Synology. This is getting super in the weeds on nerd stuff, but like I just bought like a 4-base Synology and 40 terabytes of hard drives and network switching gear and everything. Cause like I've hit a bottleneck with my home studio because I make a ton of video and it's huge files. And now I'm gonna like unlock capabilities. So yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time to be here in my house because I'm working on the business and I'm like feeling good. Like, it's cool. It's cool, man.
Yeah, yeah, making that transition from just, again, just working in the business to working on the business. I think that's a big jump that keeps people as solopreneurs, right? So
Yeah.
you get so used to just being you, and like, hey, you're doing everything that your company needs. You don't have the issue of overhead associated with personnel management, and you're the only schedule you're maintaining is your own schedule. But
Mhm.
again, you mentioned an individual does not scale well, and so you need things like technology and systems in order to help you scale and then multiply yourself, because every time you point somebody to a piece of content that you created already, you're multiplying yourself. That's time that you don't have to spend regenerating an email response or regenerating a LinkedIn response. So I think that's amazing. I think that's great for our listeners to understand. And again, just for me, as I make that transition, keeping that in mind, that I have to kind of pull myself out. And a lot of times that isn't doing some of the things that I like to do, because I don't like, trying to vet insurance providers. I
Yeah.
don't like trying to figure out who I'm going to have for my HR and accounting solution, right? Those are necessary things in order for you to scale and grow. And if you want that, like I ultimately want to pass this business on to my kids if they have that desire, but I can't do that if I built them. I created another job for myself if I don't make that transition. But
Right.
You mentioned something, especially when you start talking about your Synology and building out your storage. Can you? I don't think people recognize all the time if you're not a podcaster, or you're not in the a tech industry and using that very heavily in your business. Can you talk to the audience about what it takes to do what you do? Like just start as a podcaster, like what that looks like. Like, hey, you have to start the stream using certain software, using hardware, laptop cameras, microphones, and then you talked
Yeah.
about storage. You can talk about what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so I mean, for me personally, and I'll try to like make parallels too, because I've been doing this for a few years, and I feel like a lot of podcasters, unless you get funded for some reason, which doesn't typically happen, you kind of like slowly build up, right? Like, so I had like a beginner kit and stuff, but basically for me, um, at the current space of where I am, I mean, you can see there's with podcasting, there's a couple things, right? If we, I'm going to include video podcasting, right? For to be comprehensive. So you have audio, you have lighting, you have video, then you have the tool suite to be able to take all that information and like deliver it in some way. So you can see like my lighting, I've got like these lightings. I feel like lighting is like the extra cream. Like you don't need to have lighting. You could just be like lit up and that's fine. Audio, I had a this microphone booms here, like it's it goes well. This is the Shure SMB, and this is like the standard podcast microphone for me. Once I got a little bit of revenue coming in, I just bought like the nicest microphone and the nicest camera and like some lights and stuff like that. Oh, not because I'm like flexing, like, ooh, I got the nicest stuff, but like literally, I don't know anything about this stuff. So I just buy the thing that's probably least likely to have the problems. And then, I eliminate the amount of friction that I'm going to encounter. But to put it in perspective, let's just take my morning brief. So every single morning I do a live stream.
Mhm.
Um, at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and I've been doing it for like 600 weekdays in a row. I
Oh,
come in,
for
I've
the
got,
listeners, that's the daily cyber threat brief. Simply cyber.io. It's on YouTube. I watch it every day. But go ahead. Just one. I didn't
yeah,
want you to
no, yeah,
gloss over that because again, that adds immense value. So that they can kind of reference it, right?
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And come check out the show because you can see, like, everything I'm about to tell you, you can see what the recipient end is of it on the show. Because let's just take a step back. As a person watching a stream, you're just like consuming it and it's produced and it looks good and you're like, yeah. And if it stinks, you're like, oh, I don't like that, or like, geez, this guy's all washed out, or like I can barely hear him. Ugh. And like you just kind of like pass judgment without thinking about all the things that have to happen. So from my side of the camera, let's talk about it. So I have 3 monitors going right now. One is just a display teleprompter that I'm looking at right now. I can't see this camera. I have a camera behind a teleprompter. My image is reflected up from an 11-inch display, and that's where I'm looking at right now. This is where I basically put whatever I'm looking at because it takes a long time for people to get used to looking at a camera.
Yeah.
It's unnatural, right? You want to look away, look at your screens or whatever. So the teleprompter, it's a nice little hack. And frankly, if you're giving like a talk or you're doing slides or whatever, like you can read a script and you're not like looking down, looking back up. It's very natural. That's cool. So I've got the teleprompter. Then up here, I have like a 30-inch monitor that is my production monitor. And all of the softwares that need to run while I'm producing either live or whatever, those go up there. And I always break it into 4. So I'll tell you the 4. Top right, I have a web browser for Restream, which is a platform that I use to distribute out to my different social media. So like Restream allows me to push a feed in and push it to YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, all at the same time. So that's like the final piece before it leaves the door, right? But next to that, top left, is I use Streamlabs desktop, but I'm moving to OBS. Basically, it's the ability to like put your visuals together. So like right now, you just see me and like my name right here, and that's like basic Zoom. But like I could push a button and make my head go down into the corner in a circle, and you could see my screen, or I could have something flash across the screen, or I could make confetti rain, like whatever. that's what OBS allows me to do. And if you watch my morning stream, you'll see that I have different segments. Like, here's the general news, like I'm a newscaster. But then if I want to punch in on something, I'll push a button and it's like full screen me with just a little bit in the corner. And that like very elegant transitions is handled by Streamlabs. And I have something called a Stream Deck, which is basically just a piece of technology that has like I don't know, 25 buttons on it. Each button has a picture, and those buttons you can program to do certain things. So, like, if I was to switch screens, I just push a button. If I didn't have the Stream Deck, I would literally have to find my mouse, find the right button in Streamlabs, push the button, have it go. It would be very janky looking, and people would notice. So the Stream Deck allows me to have sound effects and do transitions very smoothly, which is like a professional switcher, right? Then, still with my production monitor, I have Discord up on the bottom left because I actually am very fortunate. I have a collection of about 10 people who are longtime Simply Cyber community members that have basically become moderators in the community. They help police the Discord server, they help everything. And I have them up going, and it's basically like, it's almost like producer chat. Like they drop, if someone asks a question in chat, I can't watch the chat because it's going so quickly. They'll screenshot and drop it in there. Or I might even say like, hey mods, can I get a link to XYZ? And instead of watching me on stream, Google for it, they drop it in and I can seamlessly, again, it's all about polish. It's all about efficiency. And then in the bottom right, I actually have Spotify up. I control the Spotify with the Stream Deck, but occasionally there's issues and, I need to be able to see like, what are we listening to? Or what are we doing? Cause I play music and stuff like that. So that's just the production monitor. Then I've got my main monitor down at the bottom. And this is where I'm interfacing with like the different stories or the different content. And this is the content that is actually presented to the audience,
Okay.
along with chat. Yeah. So that's just producing and putting it together. Then you've got your camera and your feeds. You have to buy some hardware in order to convert like a DSLR feed into a 4K feed so you can push it to there. Obviously, not obviously, but this monitor takes in XLR, not USB. So this is like a special audio interface for like higher quality. So you've got to run it into a mixing board. So actually, I'll take a picture. Just is it like Will? This will be a video pod or audio
Yeah, it'll be
only?
a video.
Okay, so like here, my kids are actually in this picture too. I have a picture of my kids who are being silly on my desk. But you could see like right there, you can see where I have a mixing board with 4 mixers, and I'm regularly
Mm,
adjusting those as needed. And then the Stream
okay.
Deck is right next to it with all those buttons.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so when we talk about there's a lot going on. That's basically what's going on in a nutshell every single morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And I've been doing it, like I said, for a while now. So I come into my office. This is going to be like mind blowing for people. I come into my office probably like 10 minutes before 8 and power on my computer and just like, essentially like run a macro. And it's like, it throws everything around. I confirm my lights, confirm my audio. And then I just chill out for like 3 minutes, drinking coffee, and then go. So it's a lot, but I've done it so many times that it's, you kind of handle it, so unless something goes wrong. And then if you've ever been part of the show, I will run, disaster recovery versions of the show or business continuity process of the show when we go sideways. And that's always fun.
Yeah, and again, I have a new appreciation because that makes my head spin. Number one,
Yeah.
and again, this is our inaugural episode for the podcast. And when I tell you guys, I have a fraction of the equipment and the technology. I have my iPhone as my camera. I have this microphone that my wife bought me. I was a musician in my former life. I played, keyboard, drums, bass,
Nice.
guitar. And so I used to have a studio. So some of this stuff is left over. I got an audio interface. I got a couple audio interfaces. I'm only using one of them. The same thing with this boom stand. All this stuff was just kind of left over from music equipment, but that is it. And you know how long it took me to prepare? It takes you 10 minutes to prepare for a live stream broadcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took me like 2 days to just get to this point where I can do something on Zoom, which is doing most of the work for me. Had to figure out what software I needed to use to get my iPhone to actually talk to my computer, because you think that would be just easy as plugging in the cable, but no, it is not.
No, it's not. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, I have a great appreciation for, again, what all goes into a live stream podcast and the level of proficiency that you've built up over time. And again, something throws you off, but you have a continuity plan to kind of help with that. You got a team that's helping you operate and not have to kind of like, I have ADHD, and so I could only imagine having a stream deck down here, and then four different quadrants on one screen, and three different monitors, and then we got like chat going, and then you got your content, Spotify, all of that. I was like, I know I won't say I would lose I would just say that would be a hill that I would have to learn how to climb one step at a time. So again,
It's
yeah,
great though.
this appreciation for what you do on a day-to-day basis. You actually make it look easy
Oh, thank
outside of
you.
the audio issues. But again, that's something that, and you're fixing that on the fly, right? And so that it's not something of like, oh, well, let's we'll just pause stream and we'll edit this out. And then like this is all happening live in real time. So again, kudos to you for the quality that comes out of it. And
Thank
even
you.
the continuity plan is like, I love it.
Well,
Now
we're all good. We're all good cyber pros, right? We got to have a business continuity plan.
that's how you got to do it. Now, did you experience that once you started down this journey, especially on the technology, like were there anything that like just surprised you as I'm like, hey, like I didn't even consider this as a major thing, but now that like your journey brought you to it, like you just like, oh man, that was like something that yeah kind of caught me off guard technology wise.
Yeah. So, maybe a little less around the technology, but around the production, there's a couple of things that jump out. So one, I only used to do produced videos. So like for the first year or so of Simply Cyber, it was just produced videos every Monday. And I found myself not enjoying the editing process, knowing that it was going to be not as good as it could be. And also I found myself like sometimes on Sunday at like 2 o'clock, like, oh, like, I had a great weekend and like we did tons of family stuff. And now it's like Sunday at 2 o'clock. And I'm like, oh damn, I forgot I got a video tomorrow. And YouTube rewards you for consistency, so
Mm,
they penalize you for inconsistency. So like I was like, oh man, I got to make a video. So then I would end up not in, I'd make a video. I wasn't really excited about it. I didn't enjoy the process. I'd kind of half do the editing, which is part of the reason why, Will, that I started doing lives because there's almost no editing, and I was like, oh, cool, like I can do the stuff and do it without editing. So I definitely enjoyed that, and then I discovered like how complicated live streaming is. So that certainly was part of it. I do have editors now, so over the time I've actually I do make produced videos now, but I outsource the editing. And again, like I have the luxury of doing that because the channel is revenue generating now. And just to talk numbers, like every video I send out for edit, if you've ever seen like a 15-minute produced video with all the punch ins and the letters and graphics, it's
yeah.
$300 a video. So like every video I release, if you see a video I release, it costs me $300 to make.
Okay.
So, and I do put monetization on, some of them make more than 300, some do not make more than 300, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And of course, like like Simply Cyber, my live streams, there's a membership community. I have two membership levels. One's $2, one's $5. To me, I'm not trying to like, retire on it, but it does help when I want to make these produced videos to deliver quality content, right? So it's not net zero. I am making more money than losing money every month, which is great. But so it's one of those things. Like I've outsourced the editing because I discovered that the editing is hard. It's time consuming. It just to put it in perspective, like this group in England that I use, I sent them a video and like an hour later they send it back and it's like got bells and whistles and music and sound effects and jokes and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like that would have taken me, 40 hours to do. So
Yeah.
I definitely have enjoyed that. Also, I guess one other thing. I got one video pulled off YouTube, right? So like I got a community strike violation, which I actually agree with. When I made the video, I thought, oh, who cares? No one's gonna. I'm too small to get community struck, but I didn't. basically, I made a video on how to use a phishing platform and how to get people's credentials. Like it was like a complete tutorial walkthrough on setting up the infrastructure to getting the creds to showing you the caught creds and everything. It was basically a turnkey solution for people to steal creds, and it was deemed dangerous by YouTube, and I lost the video, obviously, but I also couldn't produce content for like 2 weeks, and I was threatened by
Oh,
YouTube that
wow.
they'd pull my channel if I did it again and stuff. Which
That's
even
wild.
then, I probably had like 1,000 subs, and I was like, oh my god, like I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I'll follow the rules. So that surprised me for sure. I haven't had any issues since then, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's again great because I did not know that like the YouTube penalties for what they deem as inappropriate content or
yeah,
something that violates their rules. So that's good to know. And again, those future podcasters out there that are looking to follow in Jerry's footsteps, is something to keep in mind that again, YouTube takes what goes in there very seriously. Again, like moderation and you know uh, trying to censor people. Like a lot of that is for our own protections because we don't want a threat actor saying I use the Gerald Auger method
yeah.
to fish and harvest credentials. So like shout out to Dr. Gerald Auger for making this possible for us to be threat actors.
Yeah,
So
I definitely don't want to be included in like a threat actor ransom email or something like, oh yeah, like our affiliates, including Dr. Rozier. Yeah, like, oh
Oh, that's and you mentioned outsourcing as well. Again, I always think back to the E-Myth and it's like, hey, like the stuff that you don't like doing, just outsource it. Like, hey, pay somebody else to do it so that especially people that are professionals and they like it and they can do it faster, a lot better quality, and they'll enjoy the product. And then you can go out and do other things. Again, not working in your business, working on it again, and it was interesting to me when you said like, hey, you made the decision to do live stream because you didn't want to do the editing. Like I'm on the other side, like I'd almost rather do the editing than have the anxiety associated trying to do a live stream and trying to fix problems on the fly and do all the things that you're doing. So I thought that was an interesting
yeah.
perspective.
I will definitely tell you. The early streams, the early live streams, even though I've been working hard at public speaking, the early live streams, I remember like I would start like a 5 minute countdown timer, like go live, and it'd be 5 minutes that, and there's a timer counting down. I'd drop down and do like 30 push-ups. I'd like, like start moving around, like anything to like blow out the nervous energy. And
Mhm.
even then, like when you're live, it's still like a little bit of a anxiety dump, or just like, and to the like, I'm super easy now on stream. Like I'll just hit go live and be like, ah. But my guests, it's not uncommon for me to like see my guests because I do guests on Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. To be like anxious, and I always have, not always, but I have to let them know, like take care of them basically and help them through that. And once they get up and running, they're typically pretty good and feel amazing after the end. And but yeah, that's a real thing. So just if you're thinking about starting one out there, you're gonna have to basically plow through that first part. There's no way around it.
Yep, 100%. So let's transition. We're going into the final portions of the interview, and we just like to ask questions to all of our guests. So the first question is, what emerging technology trends do you see and think that small businesses should be aware of to enhance their likelihood of success?
Like within regards to cybersecurity risk reduction, or just businesses in general?
Any emerging technology that's out there that you think that would help small business owners being aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the not unfortunately, but like AI is absolutely sucking the oxygen out of every room. But it's it is the right answer. It's a transformative technology, paradigm shifting, and those terms are typically used kind of hyperbolically, but in this case, it's legitimate. I've been saying on different podcast interviews and stuff, like if you are not using AI, if you're not integrating it, if you're not leveraging it, you will be left behind. There's zero question. And I liken it to saying like like if you were not going to use the internet in the early 2000s, you're like, no, this is a fad. Like I don't, you keep your technical mumbo jumbo. Like you'd be out of business. Like there's no way you're operating without the internet. And there's no way you're going to be successful without AI. It's too powerful for creative. It's too powerful for um, customer service. It's too powerful for tier zero security ops triage. It's too powerful for enriching data in your environment and telemetry. I mean, like the use cases are like all over the place. And right now it's like very much a snow globe that's been shaken up, and people are throwing stuff at the wall thinking this could work, that could work. Every vendor is sticking a AI inside sticker on it like it's Intel back in the day. Like, and all it is like a
Yeah.
chat GPT API,
Oh yeah,
plugin.
100%.
But it's everywhere. So, but that technology alone, I mean, I don't know about you, Will. I'd love to know, but I use I use ChatGPT often, but I use AI every single day. Every single day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
same here. I use Perplexity, which is similar back end, right? It's still pulling from OpenAI. It does pull from the open internet a little bit better. I also use Gemini, which is
Mhm.
Google's version of a ChatGPT, or a large language model. And that makes things a lot easier for me, especially just it gets a good starting point. Like I use it for like, hey, I tell them exactly what type of instant response plan I want. Like, hey, it's for a manufacturing firm that has this type of technology and this type of personnel, and this is the framework I want you to base it off, and this 800, 61 version 2, whatever. And then I plug it in there, and then it gives me like a good 70-80% starting point, and then it
Yeah.
saves me time to having to build all that stuff out manually, because it'll just kind of build the framework out, and then I go and tweak it. And of course, again, I caution everybody, like, hey, don't take what it spits out at you and make that a final product. It's going to eventually come back to bite you. Their information is going to be incorrect. They're going to be inaccuracies. It's not going to be tailored. But you definitely want to use that at least as a starting point, but also as something that saves you time. That really, I use it to just save time.
That's
That's
exactly
my
what I
thing.
use it for. Right. I mean, we talked earlier, like we don't scale as humans. And if you can recover 80% of your creative time and just focus on 20% of it's like having an intern do the first leg and then give it to you and be like, okay, good. Like I'll take it over the finish line because it's raw right now and it needs to be refined.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Second question. And this is a random question we threw out there.
Okay.
And just now, you're from the Boston, Massachusetts area. You're
Yep.
from the Northeast, but now you currently live in the Southeast.
Hmm.
So in the Southeast, we have something called grits. Have you ever
Okay.
had grits before, Jerry?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so there's a big debate about how you season and flavor your grits, because nobody just eats plain grits.
No, that'd be
So,
gross.
so how do you season and flavor your grits? What do you put in there?
So I put salt, like obviously it's salt and pepper, but for me, I'm heavy, like a good tablespoon of butter, and then maybe like a fistful of cheese, like typically cheddar, shredded cheddar, but like I'll take any cheese, frankly, but like shredded cheddar. If I had the entire pantry, I'd put a dollop of syrup of not syrup, excuse me, of butter and a bunch of cheese, and then I'd be off and running. It's probably like a heart attack. It's like like oh, no bacon, Jerry, but but it's good. It's good. And then obviously down here in South Carolina, it's pretty common to get shrimp and grits. That's a very popular dish. So if you want to throw some shrimp in there, but just as a side dish with like your breakfast, you're having like French toast or something and grits. I do enjoy it that way. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm more the same. I put butter, cheese, bacon, sausage, eggs. Throw that in there. I definitely go more on the salty side. Now, there's the other side of the camp where they're putting things like jelly and
Yeah.
syrup, and I'm like, that's I don't know, is that porridge? Is that
Yeah, what are
cream
we
of
doing
wheat?
here? What are
Like,
you guys doing?
it's just like that's not grits. But again, that's just me. Again, I don't want to alienate people that to choose it to put that in there. But
They probably say GIF too, right? Let's just
that's right. Instead of Jif.
yeah.
But yeah, no, that. again, good to know. I'm glad we're on the same side of the grit debate.
Yeah, this
Um,
interview was about to get terminated quick, huh?
that's right. Hey, hopefully YouTube that isn't hard content that that YouTube has to filter. Like, oh no, YouTube algorithm says jelly, right? So,
Yep.
but
Dangerous ideas are spreading here. Well,
that's right. Oh man, so hopefully we don't get canceled by the sweet grits camp. But
yeah.
no, again, definitely a pleasure talking to you, Gerald. Where can listeners go to stay connected with you?
Oh, thanks for asking, Will. So if you go to simplycyber.io/socials, that'll drop you into a website that has links to all the different things that you can take advantage of. And I've got it broken up by like whoever you are. So like, say you want to like learn how to be a GRC analyst, there's a link for that. If you want to learn, if you just want to break into cybersecurity, I got a link for that. If you just want like my lives in the morning, there's a link for that. So some people get overwhelmed by that website. It probably needs to be revamped a little bit to be a little less intimidating. But simplycyber.io/socials, you can get my email, my LinkedIn, my Twitter. Like you, that's the ground zero. If you want to follow up with me, just tell me you heard me on Will Reed's pod, and we'll be fast friends. I'll high five you.
Awesome. Yeah, I encourage everybody to go to all those resources, a bunch of resources on simplycyber.io. I personally took the GRC analyst master course. It added a lot of value. That's something that, like, when I made the transition to cybersecurity, into the GRC world, I wish I had known about that because it'll make things a lot easier. I think I was about a year and a half in, and I was like, oh my God, like I would have been like amazing at my first job if I had known about that resource. And then there are a lot of, and that's a very, very low cost resource. But
Thank you.
also
Thank you.
he has a ton of free, again, he talked about the videos, but also just links to other sites, checklists, how-to guides, all of that. So definitely go to simplycyber.io and then just grab that. Let that be your first stop. Don't make the same mistake I did. But again, just like you saw here on this interview, that Dr. Gerald Auger, the
Mhm.
great, the legend, he added immense value here, and very transparent about his journey and then kind of where he's at, and where we can go to find out more about him. I definitely want everybody to start watching and viewing his daily podcast, the Daily Cyber Threat Brief. Every day on YouTube from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Plus, stay over, another half hour for the jaw jacking. But definitely 100% value there. I try not to miss it anytime I get a chance. So, and even like when I'm on the way home from the gym, my wife is with me and we go to the gym together, and she's getting that daily dose of that daily cyber threat brief as well. And she starts saying like,
Oh yeah, Mrs. Reed's listening to the Daily Cyber Threat
oh
Brief
yeah,
too.
and then she stops and asks questions like, "Oh, like, how do you like? What is that about?" I'm like, "Oh, this is what he actually mean." Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, but yeah, but again,
Very
plethora of
cool.
resources
Very cool.
made available by Dr. Gerald Auger. Again, thank you, Jerry, for being a guest here, and love to have you back.
My pleasure, and I look forward to the opportunity. Thank you, Will.
All right, and for the rest of the podcast, I will see you next time. Again, we're just trying to make sure that every business owner that's trying to get into the tech or cyberspace space has the knowledge, the understanding, and the resources to be successful. So, until next time, y'all have a good one.